Hello and welcome to Divine Dosed, a life beyond your drunken dreams, life on purpose and empowered, a spiritually intoxicating space where we let spirit-led people who want more in to live a hot, holy, and whole life. Today on Divine Dosed, I am going to be getting into the topic of sexual trauma, feeling safe in sober sex, and healing shame around your body, pleasure, and intimacy. This is a conversation that I'm bringing to you personally after I've had questions in my DMs to address this topic. And I'm wanting to bring it to you today from me personally because it is an area of my life that I have devoted a large chunk, the last decade of my life, going deep into sacred sexuality, tantra, and embodiment work, from yoga to meditation to spiritual healing, and finding a way to feel safe to come back to my body, which inevitably led me to allowing myself and deciding to get sober. So today this is a topic that touches my heart because it comes up very frequently, and it's something that I think everyone has some kind of a component of fear or doubt or shame, or sometimes big T trauma, little t trauma, whatever it may be. There is a systematic and social dichotomy. There is a social shame that, regardless of if you've had a perfect life around your body and you feel perfectly happy about yourselves and yourself, and you feel unashamed by sexuality, that even if that were the case, which I've never met anyone who's like, I'm 100% perfect in this area. Never have I ever. And you could be. Still, though, to the very core of our being, there is a collective shame that blankets sexuality and sensuality. And a lot of that is due to things that have fragmented us, or ego edging God out, edging ourselves out of love with that area of our life. And so it's very common for anybody and everybody to have a feeling of separation, of confusion, of shame, of guilt, of feeling, even if someone can feel very free in this area of their life, sometimes there's still this underlying current of, am I allowed to feel this way? Or am I allowed to really do what I'm doing? And then they return often to the pain body. And the pain body is something that we all live with, that we all have to some sort of degree, unless if maybe perhaps you're enlightened, that there's a feeling of pain. There's a feeling of pain and shame. And it's not what do we do about that, it's what we do with that. And today we're really going to talk about what do we do with that pain, that shame, that guilt, those things that were beyond what seemingly were our control, or were our control beyond that. And, things happened. And for instance, going through hormonal changes, that was not something that I chose. And yet going through that experience was very uncomfortable, to go from my body being one way where I remember I felt as a woman, as a girl, I felt so confident. Like before my period started, I felt so confident in myself. I felt strong. I felt like I could hang with the boys. Like I was stronger than the boys. I was in gymnastics. I was very fit, and I would like one time I even pinned a boy down to on the table. Like I put his arm around his back, put him face down. I was holding him there. He's like, "Stop," like trying to get me to stop. Cried. I got in trouble with the principal, and she's like, "You can't do that to boys." But I was very strong. I was very capable, and I really didn't care. I didn't have a lot of care about what others thought about me. Like I actually got very excited when I did things that other people didn't understand, because that meant I was, to me, living authentically. And that all shifted when I went through hormonal changes, when I started to develop feelings for boys more strongly, when I started to go through, menstruation for my first period, which totally disembodied me because one, I had no one to really talk to about that. So it became this thing that I had to hold myself, even though I had no idea. Like, there was nothing that could have prepared me for that experience. Words don't teach, experience does. And it really just set me out of my body. I was now very like wanting sexual type of connection, but at the same time felt very wrong for wanting that. And then also felt very awkward going through pimples and acne and, weird smell changes in my body odor. And I just didn't feel confident anymore. I didn't feel safe in my skin. I felt this collective shame of what women have gone through for centuries, before I came into the picture of this now thing that's coming from my body is bad, it's gross, it's wrong, it's unsanitary. Like they literally used to, and oh gosh, what was it, like the early 1900s, late 1800s, they would do these advertisements for sanitary aprons for women to have to wear a sanitary apron outside of her dress during menstruation to try and like protect the chairs, or heaven forbid she sit on something, that someone else would sit on, that it would protect it from the gross tusk thing that she was going through. Like, that all is felt. Even doesn't matter your gender, doesn't matter your race, doesn't matter anything. Like, we feel this collective shame around our bodies and around sensuality, from millennia of perceived, advertisements and religious moves that tried to separate us from that. And I'm a person who, don't get me wrong, like there is a time and a place. Like, I will go to a church, I will listen to the messages and truly hear the truths, right? That's the faith that I believe in, is that can I hear the truths, and can I set aside the parts that separate me from others, that separate me from God, that separate me from love, that separate me from intimacy. And there have been a lot of, different political, religious, states of mind of trying to control, dominate for power, prestige, whatever it may be. That isn't of the highest and best for all. And that drove a lot of people, for many millennia, to feel shame about their body or shame about their sex, like what they were born in as a gender. And I'm a very passionate about this topic because I personally have gone through a lot of confusion in this area, a lot of pain, a lot of shame, and that's okay. It's not that it's wrong. And what I want people who are feeling maybe in pain or confusion about their sensuality to pause for a moment and just say, what is it like to sit with that, right? To not have to need to fix it or change it or even understand it fully. And that's something that I'm going to invite you today to do, is can you allow the spirit of love, God, divine, whatever you want to call it, the universe, to hold you in what you're feeling and what that feeling is and that pain body around it, right? And as we sit here today, to be able to see what shifts as you're just holding space, not to make it bad, not to make it wrong, not to make it good, not to make it anything, just that it is, isness, isnes, a state, in fact, which something is. It just is. Let it be there. And then we'll move through this conversation with it. Welcome it, have it take a seat next to you and say, are you willing to and open to listen to this and be held in love, be seen, be heard. And then just discover, maybe there's a phrase or something that it says to you that it wants. This part of you, it may have a name, it may have a texture, a feeling, it may be in a particular place in your body. And just notice that as we go along in this experience, in this conversation today. I am I'm feeling it. I'm feeling you here with me. And I want to tell you, thank you for showing up today. Thank you for tapping into this conversation because I know it can feel edgy. And in my methodology, everything comes down to edge of aliveness, which means that a lot of people are on the edge of comfort, edge of similarity, edge of familiarity, but not in the edge of aliveness, not leaping off that edge and getting off the cliff, growing wings on the way down, getting into the state of flow where you are trusting the things that we cannot see and going anyways, finding out anyways, discovering anyways, regardless of what the past has projected onto the future. And that's what present living is. And that's what we want to do when we come to topics like sensuality and sexuality and about sober sex is like we want to move away from holding that pain body through the past, through what it projects in the future, but really truly coming in and anchoring into this moment because that's where we're going to start to feel embodied. Embodiment is this thing that is so talked about and so expressed in words. And so many people, like, I know a lot of kind of more normie thinkers or people who try to say, like, this may be kind of a woo conversation. Embodiment, I can get that. I can get behind why that sounds esoteric or weird. But truly, think about this. Like, think about eject. Like, we used to have like CDs, right? Back in the day. And I don't know if you remember, you might be too young for this, but like if you put a CD into the disc player and the CD had too many scratches all over it and you put it into the disc player, it would like shoot that disc player out because it was like, I can't read what's on this disc. I can't actually transcribe and transcend this into something that you can listen to, right? So it pushed it back out. And that's the same thing for our bodies. It's what happens is you go through life and eventually something happens, big T, little tree, whatever. We all experience some kind of pain, some kind of thing that says that, ooh, maybe my body isn't as safe as I thought, or now that I'm hearing this thing and I'm now feeling like maybe, oh, I can't think about my body in that same way. You know, we all have, there's different stories that come with that, or an actual big T trauma happens where something is forced upon you where you didn't expect, you know, and had no control over that. And so what happens in those moments is that we eject from our bodies and say this body is no longer a safe place to be. I'm going to now eject. And then that part now lives in this protected bubble of pain, right? It's like, oh, I'm now in survival mode. I'm now in, it's unsafe for me to go to this, to feel this, or to do this, or to experience my body in this way. And what happens is a lot of people get into habits, patterns, and rituals of comfort that allow that pain body to remain where it is. And then in order to get out of that pain body, many people use substances, drinking, drugs, to alter their mind, to alter their state so that they feel okay enough to be intimate, to share their body, to be in their body, when really you're not in your body. You're just overriding that pain body that's telling you, I don't feel safe. And that's disembodiment. When anytime I need to use something else to feel okay in myself enough to do something, that means that you're not embodied. Ways that we come back to our body, and I teach this a lot, is through sensation awareness, to meditate with, you know, the eyes closed and trace and track your inner sensations of your body. I really like the work from Dr. Betty Martin. She does the Wheel of Consent, and she takes us through this. Like, instead of looking at the body and the sensations as this overtly sexual thing, instead finding it kind of like a doctor would. Like a doctor looks at how does this function? How does this move? What does it do when I bend this? What does it do when I touch here to here? And oh, it's squishy. Oh, it's this. And then being aware of what it feels like, and then going into color, texture, temperature, pace. And visuals. I often notice as we go into our bodies, many people will have visuals. Sometimes it's of a memory or of a favorite place that they've been to, or sometimes it's a place that they want to go to that they will feel really called and safe with. And it's a way to slow down the mental chatter and to slow down the living of the past and the living in the future and coming into this present moment and starting to bridge that gap between the ejected pain body self that says, "Ooh, this is not safe," and to be able to say, "Okay, I can come back now because it's safe." And starting to bridge that gap and inviting your consciousness and inviting your thoughts and inviting um, your physicality to say, "Oh, actually, I can do this." And we do that through naming that. Like, ooh, in my belly, I feel an emptiness. I feel like a big hollow, like a knot in a tree, like a big hollow knot in a tree, almost that you would see like an owl burrowing its nest in and sleeping over, during the day. And it's kind of mysterious. And oh, it feels, and when I move that energy up, I feel like like a sharpness in my right breast, and it feels a pain and heavy and almost like a hardening, like a rock, texture. And it's rough and then up in my chest I feel like ooh, like a buttery smooth up in my neck and my collarbones. And next thing you know, I'm breathing deeper. Next thing you know, I'm feeling more present with what my body is telling me. And I love that practice because it works for anyone, even kids, we to slow down and to give ourselves permission to watch like a deer, like as if you were tracking a deer in the woods and you were just noticing, where does it go? Goes to the right, goes to the left, goes up, goes down, and then naming the sensations, the colors, the visuals, maybe even the memories that come up. And this is a way I call it sensation mapping, mapping out the body, mapping out the sensations. And then sometimes, like I said, there was almost a numbness and emptiness, and that's also very welcomed, right? There's sometimes these islands of experience in our body, which they're highly expressive, and then there's sometimes places in our body that aren't. And this is the number one way for anyone starting out and for experts to beginners alike. That is such an important practice to not just do with yourself, begin with yourself and then with your partners, with your family, to be able to start to name these things as a way to create it's the wheel of a consensual experience. And, this is the same thing when we're in relationships, is that when a fracture happens, the same thing happens. It's like we eject ourselves, like, oh, this hurts too much, or and then you want to leave the relationship, and sometimes that is the best option, or sometimes it just creates a fracture within the tie of love. And what often happens in that is that we disassociate it in our bodies as well and say, this is not safe to feel, it's not safe to hear. I now don't trust my physicality to hold this. And one of the things we can do to slow that down is the method of SEW, sensation, S, emotion, EW. What do you want and need? And this is a very practical and efficient process to help us to process our emotions, to come back into our body and to feel safe. Is to name the sensation that you're experiencing in your body. Like, oh, I feel a tightness in my hands. I feel them wanting to crunch up into making fists. I feel like sharp, jagged edges moving up my arms. And then you go into emotion. Emotion is annoyance, frustration, anger. Oh, a little bit of light play, kind of devious, like more, like look at me, this manipulative, pride, satisfaction. So you go into the emotion, then you go into what do I want? What do I want right now? I want to be heard. I want to just speak and speak and speak and speak and speak. And then I want to empty everything out that I need to empty out and be heard. And then, you do that with your partner or with your family or with people that we get into confrontation with as a way to say, oh, I can come back to my body. And why this has anything to do with sexual trauma, feeling safe in your body and your sex, and getting to some of these other questions that were asked of me to answer is that it all comes down to sensuality. The people, we jump so fast into wanting to just talk. Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's, yeah, okay, that's, but there's so much more involved than just banging it out, you know? That's when those modalities can kind of turn in on itself instead of it being a sacred practice of devotion. When you can be able to show up in a sensual union and to slow it down enough that you can remove the substances and the mind altering and the drug, drinking, all of that, and you can really truly look at your lover, at your partner, and to be able to say what you're feeling in your body and what you truly want and need, and then letting that start to drive your connection, letting your touch slow down from doing something that you think that they want into actually finding out what they want. And these are all some practices and tools, but essentially to be disembodied means that you're living in a continual pain body from sexual trauma and shame. And to recover from that trauma and from that sexual shame is to truly start to say, I'm going to be willing and open to allow something greater than myself to hold me in this, like right now, and then practice and have a new experience. Because, like I said, words don't teach, experience does. And so, yes, like let that trauma, let that pain be held, let it have space to breathe, to ask for what it wants, and to name SEW for that part of you that feels sexually traumatized or pained. Let that part of you feel held, be held, and then express its sensations, its emotions, its wants and needs. And then you say, thank you for sharing. And then you go ahead and place that part of you in a safe place, like in your imagination at a beach or in the mountains or, at your cottage from when you were younger that you could go to every summer by the lake, whatever it may be. You let them be there after you go through those 3 questions, and you continue on with your life, and you continue on bridging that gap within the sensations in your body. And the next question about this and around this is, how do you get support after? Like, how do you get support after sexual trauma or sexual shame? And my number one thing is like, anything that I'm trying to hold myself, that's a sign that it's like you're only as sick as your secrets, right? And the more I'm trying to hold on to something and to protect it, the more it's going to run my life in the background, right? And the way to demystify that is to find another person, a community, someone that you can have a so-called confession with. And that confession is something where you have this space to be able to express it all to a safe person, to a confidant, to a spiritual mentor. Could be even like a priest or rabbi or, someone that you feel truly safe, like you feel called to share this with them, a therapist. And to build up that relationship if you need, right? And getting permission from this part of you, say, hey, I want us to start to be held in this, and support in this. And I would like you to come with me and have these conversations with this fill in the blank person, mentor, therapist, and that we're going to start to open up about it. And allowing yourself the grace, right, to peel back the layers like an onion, but also be so courageous. This is where the edge of aliveness comes in, where you say, okay, I want to get to the edge and I want to allow myself to launch into the next, thing. But my highest recommendation is to have someone that can truly hold you in that, especially someone who's licensed IFS work is really great, internal family systems. And that's the biggest thing though, is to start to have a conversation with this part of you that feels, and this could be in journals, right? Where you write back and forth from yourself, from this pain body, and starting to ask for that permission, to, are you willing to trust me now as, this aware, capable adult, right? Because oftentimes these hurt or pain-bodied parts are often very young. And so updating them on your age, saying like, do you know how old we are? And it says, I think you're 14. It's like, no, we're not 14 anymore. We're 30 or whatever your age is. And you update them on that and starting to have these conversations and then getting someone else in your corner who can help you through this process. Because ideally, like, it takes a village. It takes a village to live. And that's something in this modern age, I swear, like ChatGPT is becoming a lot of people's best friends, and which is, I mean, good, it's fine. And we still need that humanly connection. We still need people. We still need support from people who can say, maybe that's not exactly right, or that's not exactly true, who can hold us in that. But ChatGPT is absolutely a tool to use for that as well. But building a community around this, finding like-minded spaces that do healing around this work, and just getting into rooms and getting into forums and online conversations where people are actively pursuing the healing path, a path of honesty, a path of openness, and a path of willingness, right? Because not everybody is willing to look at these things. That's why oftentimes, it's I think one of the most challenging things was to decide to get sober and then to allow myself to surrender to that as a new way of life, because it made everything else like me numb to everything else. So when you start to remove that substance and that numbing, looking at these things can be very jarring and very uncomfortable, right? Edge of aliveness. It is going to require some discomfort, right? To look at things in your life around sexuality and to find the commonality in the thread. Because ideally, one of the greatest things is when you can start to, one, work on it for yourself, right? Finding that person that is capable of guiding you through this, right? Like me or somebody else, who's capable, who's walked through it, who's had a direct experience from this sexual trauma, shame, pain, and who is able to walk through it and continually find a new freedom, a new message, a new edge that they get to play into in a life that allows them to now live freely. So finding someone to do that with is to one, and then two, we want to two, after you get the help for yourself, then the next step is to then become of service in that way or form, to be able to see yourself helping someone else or to be able to have that conversation with someone else. So it's like, I don't get to keep what I do not transmit. Like I keep what I learn by doing, right? By giving that to someone else. So after I'm held space for being a beacon of hope for another person, that's where your mask turns into your message, right? And oftentimes that's the missing link for a lot of people, is like, okay, I've gone through all this stuff, I've gotten the help for it, but then they never take the next step, which is helping someone else now with that, whether that's your kids or whether that's your partner, whether that's a friend of yours or a family member, to be able to start to have these kinds of open conversations, or in the communities that you join, to be able to hold space for them. Which when I taught a class called Erotic Movement for 2 years, and it was, people would get so confused kind of about what it was exactly because we would start off the class with like all the modalities that I've learned that have helped me, and I put it into one class and called it erotic movement. And, we started with a meditation, then we got into breath work, then we got into stretching and yoga. And then all of a sudden we were like twerking. And then, and the next thing we're like having a sexy dance off. And then our energy, we're like shaking throughout the room and everyone's jumping around like little monkeys. And then all of a sudden it gets like quiet. And then you're with a partner. And then next thing you know, you're proclaiming all of your deepest, darkest secrets, and then they're holding you in that space, and then you hold them, and then you switch partners, and it's like, oh wow. And that was an opportunity where people got to practice of being of service with their with their message, and also being really open and honest about this thing that has so much shame for people, and I honest, out of 2 years, I'd only had two people walk out of that room, because once they got in there and they got the experience of it, they're like, holy crap, like I didn't know I needed this, but I want this, and it's helping me, and it's healing me, because one, you're now in a community and you're no longer alone. It takes a village, it takes people, it takes support. You're only sick as your secret. So now we're no longer holding secrets, and our honesty gets to come out, and people are like, I'm sober right now and I'm having so much fun and I'm having energetic orgasms. I've never had an energetic orgasms, right? Because we don't need those things to feel these things, but oftentimes what we truly have got is the permission, is a space that is saying, out of everything in this world that tells you cannot be this or cannot feel that, or it's shameful to do this, that to put yourself in a room that says, we're going to feel this, we're going to talk about this, and not only that, I'm going to love you through it, right? And to only have two people leave because they were too scared is huge, right? Because that says a lot about the safety net that I created around an environment of people who'd never met each other before, have no idea what they're about to do, and then now are doing it. So get in a community, one. Two, one, do it for yourself, do the healing for yourself. Two is start to share and help other people. Help other people to start to have the breakthrough. Help other people. And even if it's posting something or checking in on a friend, and saying, I'm here for you if you ever want to talk, or ever have or your partner who you notice who kind of clams up when you hug them or something spontaneously, to be able to have that conversation with them and say, hey, I used to be really ashamed of what I look like. And physically, I didn't want to take off my clothes because, one time in third grade, someone told me I was fat, and my whole perception, I started thinking like I'm fat. So now I'm working through this, and you can even ask them. Sometimes it's even asking other people for service that can be the service, right? It's like asking them, so when I take off my clothes, like, can you affirm to me that I'm safe, that I'm sexy, that you see me, and then if anyone loves you and then you're with them, they can do that. They should do that. I don't want to should, but they should do that. A loving person will want to do that. That's more appropriate. So those are the two big things. And if another part of the question that I got in my DMs is like, what if something really uncomfortable happened? What do you do now? And that has happened to so many people. And I'm not gonna, this doesn't negate that it's happened to you, because what you feel about that is real, right? What you feel about that is real. It's what you now get to do with that becomes your destiny. That becomes that destiny shaped in the moment of decision. That becomes either your cage or your stage, right? And I want you to really breathe with that discomfort. And that's the same thing that I said in the very beginning, is like, welcome that to the table. Welcome that part of you that feels uncomfortable to the table, and say, you have a spot here too. But now adjusting that age, letting them know, like, what age are they? Are they 14, 6, 20? And then update them. Okay, well, I'm 30 now, and I want to thank you for showing up today. And I want to see, they might not trust you yet as like a totally sourced soul and source-centered self. And you can start to move in that direction, right? Of starting to lead and guide from that center point of, we're now going to start to move in a direction of being led by this source-centered self. Not the scared self, not the one that was traumatized self, but allowing them space at the table and walking life with them, right? asking for what you need when it comes up, that sensation, emotion, want, and need. And I want to relay this back to, especially when drinking or driving or drinking or in altered states are involved when in these uncomfortable situations. Because if you've ever been, if you're recovering from any form of addiction, it hijacks the experience, right? And so oftentimes it leads to doing things from the pain body, right? Uh, I have not had a one night stand in being, in recovery, but I used to have the many, many, many one night stands, um, and drinking and drugging because I was only acting from an altered state, from an edging God out. Like anytime you're in an intoxicated state, you're no longer under the influence of God or under the influence of your source or under the influence of truth, whatever you want to call it. You're now under the influence of that thing. And oftentimes those things, like that substance, is a mirror. It's a mirror trying to perceive itself as truth, as God, as healing. But it's not. It's just not. The real truth is that it's already within you. And so when we use those substances, we eject ourselves from our body. Boop, there we go. We're not in our body. And now this ego or pain body is going out to seek more pain because that's misery likes company, right? And so oftentimes those instances can attract more pain, right? How many times did I do things that I regret, that I had remorse over, that I felt awful about while drinking and using? And then I had a few instances when after I had gotten sober, like I had been okay with like semi-abuse before in sexual relationships. And then when that happened in my, while sober, I was like, absolutely freaking not, because I was now a source-centered self. I was no longer acting out of that survival mode and that part of me that had been so hurt by things growing up with that I felt like when I was drinking, I didn't have enough resources. So for me, when that would happen, a part of me felt like I deserved it. And so that if I deserved it, I must keep needing to attract that to validate that comfort zone. And so what happens is often those things that have happened become a gauge, it's like you think about a thermostat and you set the thermostat to 76, whatever, and that's your comfort zone. But if you go like to 60 degrees, that's like, oh, you're like, oh, this is too cold, this is too much. But then if you also go to 89, then it's like, oh, that's too high, that's too high, that's too hot. And that's the same thing with our experiences and trauma and pain and all of that, is that you, we go through these just like sometimes horrific experiences, but then that becomes part of this almost comfort zone. Like, oh, obviously this must be just something I now have to live with and deal with, and it somehow starts to reflect on you as a person and start to make that mean something about you. So then that pain body gets attached, and in that pain body, whether or not you're using substances, you can take away those substances, you can come into sobriety, you can still feel that same shitty way. And why is that? Because the pain body is now addicted to that as a comfort zone story, setting the degree, the thermostat is 76 degrees, and it doesn't want to go below or above, right? And we've got to learn through community, one, through doing the work yourself, two, by then sharing what you learn and you experience with another person, holding that space so it ingrains it into your body and you get to what? Keep it. Is to move that thermostat, is to be able to start to nudge it up, nudge it up, nudge it up. And oftentimes having a big leap and a shift and just like in a one call like this would be too much for many people who've been holding on to those states of trauma and pain that have occurred sometime in the past. because it's been such, I don't want to call it a crutch, but like it's been such a comfort or such a companion or such a familiarity friend almost, like I remember when I was getting sober or wanted to get sober, and I hired a professional friend, and she came over, and one day, I was really struggling with my drinking. I'm like, I want to stop, but I can't. And so she asked me like, what, why can't you just not, and and then I got really honest. I said, because it's my friend. It's my friend. So how many can you like it may be even hard to see that the misery likes company, like the pain body wants more pain because that's what feeds it. That's what feeds the edging God out. That's what feeds, this story that has somehow ingrained itself as this is my thermostat comfort zone setting. That's the edge, not the aliveness. That's the edge. And we want to move off the edge into the aliveness part, and you've got to start by starting. Start by getting honest. Start by asking for help beyond yourself, another person, another human, someone who has experience and can help guide you away from that and into moving your thermostat growth, right? We turn it into a gain, a growth. That's why it's like you turn your mess into your message. Your story becomes your biggest asset. Listen to that. Your sexual trauma and pain and feeling uncomfortable in your sobriety around sexuality can become the story that helps another person, can become the message that allows another person to be able to avoid that or not go through that or know that they're no longer alone in that, right? Your experience becomes your expression. So today, this is, I know I wanted to go into also, the sober state too before we end this, because I know when I first came in, I still had to like get used to like I don't think I had had sober sex. I don't think I had sober. I never thought about that, but holy crap! Like I don't think I had had sober. Like maybe like times like bouts of having sexual contact without having a substance in my body, but not being in a state or stint of sobriety ever. Like I don't think that exists. So that's a pretty big deal, like, to take away these things that you rely upon, which could be anything, right? Our addiction could be to the story, the past story, which in addiction, when we're recovering from substances, those stories, it's not our drinking, it's the thinking. It's the thinking that leads us to returning to that bottle, returning to that comfort, that friend. So, yeah, you remove that and you're like, ugh, I feel like, ugh, okay. So we have to start to replace that with new things, because if you start to remove that story or remove that meaning that it has on your life, the drugs, the drinking, the trauma story, and when you start to remove that as like, okay, this is why I get to continually live in pain, instead it's like, oh no, now this is why I get to continually live in my purpose. And we don't have to get into all the nitty gritties of why, but we go into the feeling, sensation, emotion. What do you want and need? What does it want and need? Moving through that, getting into service, serving as an act of authentic expression of, okay, and I'm no longer alone in this, but now I'm actually gonna help others in this. And then removing that substance, okay, but now what? Like, how do I feel good in my body through experience? Get in the roots, get in the experience of starting to learn to play with new modalities and asking for what you want, having a different conversation in the very beginning of your intimate experiences. And I really love having conversations, and oftentimes your partner can be kind of thrown off by this, but especially when you've been together for a while with someone, it is so important and crucial to be able to check in about your desires, your boundaries, what you want to create from that energy together that you're going to share, and and being able to set it up in that way so that one, resentments don't start to form, but two, that you're not going to start to override your truth, and you're going to set up a format that allows you to start communicating honestly in the very beginning. And this, it doesn't matter if you've been together for 40 years or 4 years or 4 seconds. It's okay. Setting up that conversation allows that pain body of yourself that has the story, the experience of the sexual trauma, the shame, the pain, to feel supported, and that you're not going to override her or not going to override them in your sexual expression, but that you're actually going to allow them to be heard in the moment. And it's like, I don't, there's not a study on this, but I promise you, it's like 10 times more likely that if you start the conversation before the touching and the intimacy and all that starts to happen, if you start the conversation about your wants, your boundaries, your intention for the time together, your desires, if you have that conversation before you get into it, it's going to be 10 times more likely that during you're going to stay open to communicating. So that way you don't go past those points of pain, but instead stay in that consensual zone of creative energy that allows you to continually trust your body, continually trust yourself, and continually share and trust with your partner or your lover. So there's a big journey when, for some people in sobriety who have a lot of feelings about it. And I will love to get more in depth with that topic on another, like really get into the what happens, when you remove these substances, what kind of, you know, you want to call them defects in the body, but they're not defects. They're just misaligned. They're like parts of your body that you ejected yourself from and you haven't come back to yet. That's what I like to think about, is that you just haven't returned to that part of your body yet, or haven't returned to feeling safe and good and sexy in that space yet. And so I want to do that in like a whole nother episode. And just, I want to leave you with this, is that this is a process and a journey. And I think the number one thing is to get around people who express in ways that motivate you, that inspire you, that feel like, I want what she has. I want what they have. I want, whether that's me, whether that's someone else who says like, okay, yeah, they're like leading a business while feeling sexy and alive and, and fun, whatever, to give you that permission slip to say, okay, I get to start to move away from this being a reason for me to continually be and live in pain, shame, guilt, doubt, fear. And now I get to use it as a place for me to love, to hold, to allow that to have space and to grow, right? Look at it as a gain, only gains and solutions. That is life, right? That gets to be your perspective now. And it doesn't mean that it wasn't wrong. It doesn't mean that you were bad or dirty or filthy or any of that. And I think sometimes like truly people take on that identity like there must be something wrong with me. Right. And in law of attraction, it would say like, okay, the victim already had thought it was a victim, so it attracted the victim, experience. But it's like, okay, if I can stop, if I can turn over my idea of being a victim as like this need or necessity or turn on, or like I'm getting, we're always getting something out of that. I know it's hard to hear that. And you might not like, you might be turning off this episode right now because you're like, what? No, no, no. And I hear you, because I have been in abusive situations, and I have been in things that maybe hijacked my, not maybe, did hijack my innocence. And I don't have to resist it anymore, because what resists persists, right? So if I just keep trying to resist it and keep trying to play into the victim role of it, I will keep getting that as the result. And this is just a hard truth in my own experience, is that at some point I needed to put my pen to paper. I needed to write about it. I needed to share about it with another person. And then I needed to help someone else who was going through that as well. To be able to get outside of myself, to move through the tears and into a space where I could hold another. And then not only that, but that I allowed myself to be held. That is moving from a victim into a victorious source-centered self that is so capable, so loved, so seen, so heard, so nourished. And to begin to choose things that feel good, but then also choosing things that allow us to meet fear and be in the energy of courage, because courage is feeling the fear and doing it anyways. And that's the message I want you to get today, is that you're moving through something that's going to require you to be brave, to be courageous, and to keep showing up for it. I want to know how much this moved you, touched you, what you thought, what you felt, and to please share this with another person, because sharing is caring, and a joy shared is doubled, and a grief shared is halved. And so this is not just for you, this is for your loved ones, this is for the people in your life, because this is a conversation that maybe hasn't been had in such a way. It's never been had in this way exactly as it's had today, because I've never said the things that I've said before in the exact cadence and the exact format and the exact rhythm and the exact way that has been delivered today. And it's because you were meant to hear it, and you were meant to also share it. That is that second part of the 2 steps that I gave you today, is to deliver this and help and share this with another. Take a deep breath in. Holding the breath at the top of the inhale. Pulling up through your root lock like you're holding to go to the bathroom. Gazing at your third eye, softening your shoulders, unfurling your eyebrows, smoothing out your jaw, letting your jaw melt away. Keep holding. And then big breath out. Ah. Good. Continue to breathe deep, normally, naturally, and notice any sensations that you feel in your body: colors, texture, temperature, pace. Sharing them out loud if you want to. And I want you to now say, I affirm, I'm welcoming myself back to my body. I'm remembering it's okay to be in my own skin. And even if I feel that doubt and that fear and that pain body, that may not trust it yet, that I'm willing and I'm open to do the next right step, to take the next best move, to move from the edge of comfort and get into the aliveness. I want to thank you so much for tuning in to Divine Dosed today. Thank you for showing up for you. Thank you for showing up, not just for you, but for who you're going to now get to touch and help and serve from this. Never underestimate the investment that you make in yourself, whether it's a financial investment, a time investment. When you take that plunge and you believe in yourself and you do the thing, you're not just expanding your own life. You're expanding the history of your family. You're expanding the history that will be left as a legacy beyond you. And there may be at least one soul that you're going to touch. Who knows? You may even save their life. This is a big, big mission to lean into and live with, but know that you are not just holding this alone. You've got me, but not only that, you are divinely held in a power that creates worlds. And today you have been encircled in that and not dosed by a drug or substances. You've been dosed by something that is truly infinite and cannot be replicated and can truly only come from within you. Until next time, get your sexy on. Get your sexy silver on and say yes. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today on this deep and profound topic. I would love to see you in the comments on Instagram, in my DMs, and in my life. I want us to co-create together. Let's make magic. Let's do the things. And I'm so excited to let you know that right now, if you get in on the wait list and my email list, you get to get the first look at the Sober Summit that's coming. It's a secret, so you don't even get the name yet, but it's coming soon in the fall, and you get the first look, the pre-sale price with loads of bonuses that will not be available when it is released to the public. So right now is your chance to get infused, not with substances, but with your true nature. This is not just for people who are sober, but it is for people who are recovering from people pleasing, recovering from drugs and alcohol, recovering from codependency. You're recovering in your life from sexual trauma, recovering. It's time to recover. This is where we're really going to grow our faith-based system that allows us to be held no matter what, moving away from fine into fulfillment. I'm talking like life expanded, hopelessly happy. I revel with a cause. I am here for it. So join in on it right now. Join my email list. And if you don't know how to get there, DM me on Instagram. It's Rachel-Justine Recovers on Instagram, Rachel-Justine Recovers. Divine Dose is my second account, so there's no way, no excuse for you not to find it and to dive into it. But the Sober Summit you don't want to miss. And if you are listening to this and the Sober Summit's already happened in October 2025, then guess what? 2026, we're going to have the live in-person one. You didn't hear it here, but something is going to launch then in live happening in 2026. So get on that email list so you can get the invite. And thank you so much again for tuning in. You've been Divine Dosed.